This is Nathan Nichols, part of the marketing team at MetaScale. Today we have Ankur Gupta and Justin Shepard talking about Hadoop use cases, specifically focusing on some processing and speeding up workloads within the enterprise. So let's just kick it off, and I'll pass it over to Ankur.
Thanks, Nathan. Hey guys, thanks for joining our webinar today. This is a series of webinars that we are doing. The first part is speeding up data workloads using Hadoop and talking about some use cases on that. So let's get started. There's a lot of hype about big data. As you know, almost every big production is writing about whether big data is a buzzword, how should an enterprise should use it, what to do about it. And from a recent Wikibon survey, it says that there are over 46% of big data practitioners have reported that they have only realized partial value. So while a lot of companies are jumping the board and kickstarting on big data, it's an open source technology, let's try something, let's do something quickly, without really understanding what it is good for. So what ends up happening is, even though you can kickstart your journey in this area, you may not always get the full benefit or even the desired benefit of what you're trying to achieve if you do not clearly specify that. But why? According to Wikibon, there are three compelling reasons for the struggle, why companies have not been able to completely achieve the full potential of what it offers, this technology offers. So the three main reasons being, one, lack of big data skill practitioners in the market, so essentially lack of talent in the market. Part of this being it's somewhat a new technology. The technology has been there for a while, but the adoption has not been that high, and the curve is getting steeper and steeper. But that also means that there are not many Hadoop talent out there that are available with experience in using and implementing Hadoop in a large enterprise. So not having a skilled talent in your organization could really stop you from fully realizing the potential of what you're trying to achieve. And as we have said in one of our previous webinars, is that your existing DBAs and technology folks may not be able to help you just because the technology is so new and complex, and it's very different from what everybody in the IT organization is so used to, which is relational databases and such. And finally, actually, one of the very basic reasons that we hear a lot of companies miss on is lack of compelling business use case, and that's the topic of our presentation today. It's really without clearly identifying success criteria, identifying what a company is trying to achieve, and just jumping on their big data journey is really not, in our opinion, the best way to do it. And what ends up happening is if you just try something without really realizing or identifying what use cases are trying to solve, what is success criteria for your organization, you'll realize that whatever little investment you've made may not fully result in the results that you were trying to achieve. So I think it's a good time to introduce MetaScale. We probably should have done it in the beginning, but MetaScale is a wholly owned subsidiary of Sears Holdings Corporation, the holding company that owns Sears, Kmart, and brands like Kenmore, Craftsman, and such. We were born out of Sears after Sears started on its big data journey long before most enterprises were even thinking about it. And Sears started about 4 years ago. We had our own difficulties. We had to learn, build talent, and develop technologies and capabilities in-house. But in the last couple of years, we have somewhat attained perfection in this area, and we have become a subject matter expert as far as big data technologies are concerned and the usage and implementation of Hadoop is concerned. We saw commercial opportunities as other enterprises start thinking and using Hadoop. So we formed MetaScale to bring out the capabilities, expertise, and talent that we have developed in-house to provide these services to outside organizations. And MetaScale, because we come from a larger enterprise, coming back to my previous discussion on the challenges of why a company is unable to fully achieve the potential of their big data initiative, we are very familiar with that because we at Sears, we started with that. When we started with our Hadoop journey, we were very, very new. There were not a lot of help out there. So we did make a lot of mistakes. We learned from them, but now over the years we have built experience and capabilities in this area, and I would refer to the three main bullet points here. using our Hadoop ecosystem of big data tools, we have developed solutions in the three main areas that we have listed out as key challenges of why organizations have been unable to fully realize the potential of their big data initiatives. So one is experience building internal Hadoop skills. Very recently, Justin and I actually spoke about building talent for your big data. So I'd refer you guys to go back to our website and look at the webinar if this is something that interests you. Then second is experience putting Hadoop workload into production. There is another webinar that Andy McNullis from MetaScale team did. It's really how to make a case for Hadoop in your organization. How do you really kickstart your journey with Hadoop and implement it in your enterprise? And finally, experience identifying Hadoop business use cases. So when we talk to our client, we really help them take a step back, really think about why are you doing something? What are the use cases that you are trying to solve? And sometimes we look at the use cases that a client may have or they assume that may be solved using big data. We help them really, we have to make sure that those are the right use cases. And what we do on our side is something called Use Case Discovery Workshop. That's a multi-phase workshop where we take our clients through pain points they may have, their existing infrastructure, and how really Hadoop fits into that infrastructure to solve a problem that a business or IT might be facing. Okay, so let's start with some basics. I've mentioned Hadoop quite several times here, but what is Hadoop? Some of you may know that in 2002, Google folks published this paper on MapReduce, and then in 2008, folks from Yahoo, Doug Cutting and his team, created Hadoop as an open source ecosystem, an open source platform. It's an ecosystem of technologies that allow you to process very large amount of data very quickly. It's a highly fault-tolerant system with data application clustered environment that really is one, it's a cost-effective solution, and two, it's open source. So your traditional EDW could do what Hadoop can do, but Hadoop can do it at a lot less price, and also it's open source technology, so there are a multitude of developers that are contributing to it, and more development is happening in this area. And within Hadoop ecosystem, there is this language called Pig, and we're directly jumping onto that because Pig is an efficient and powerful programming language. We initially tried Hive in our ecosystem, and we realized it's a lot more complex and would not be able to give us the same results that Pig could. But Pig is somewhat SQL-lite, very simple, easy to learn. On our side, we were able to train many of our COBOL programmers to Pig programming quickly and be able to do use cases like mainframe migration and such that Justin will take you through in a few minutes. So Hadoop for big data. There are a couple of just basic use cases that we have listed here. It's a good fit for your organization if your IT is facing pressure to lower cost and deliver data faster. If you have ETL bottlenecks, who doesn't? I mean, we are all very familiar with ETL problems, managing ETL, and in upcoming use cases, we will take you through how we have used Hadoop as a data hub to manage ETL. If you're looking for, if you have lots of data on your side and looking for a simple, cost-effective solution to be able to just store the data and also be able to manage it, analyze it, then Hadoop is a great solution for you. With Hadoop, it's now possible to archive your data at the same time analyzing it. And that's really very powerful. So it's, I mean, we get questions all the time that is Hadoop a replacement for your current EDW? And we say, not really, it's a great supplement. It takes the heavy batch processing off of your existing EDW and can process that data very, very quickly and save you a ton of money in doing that. And also provide you a platform that is allowing you to ask questions that you were not able to ask before. Because just because the data size was so big and because the processing power wasn't there at the cost that you wanted it to be. So speeding up data workloads, so coming close to our use cases today, we have developed quite a few use cases. MetaScale today works with a multitude of organizations. Even though we are born out of retail, we have clients in healthcare, in retail, of course, technology, and such, where we are working with a multitude of use cases. So what we want to do today is take you through some of the use cases that we have developed and help solve for our clients, essentially. So I'll start with the first use case. That was one of the very first use cases on pricing optimization, and then I'll invite Justin to take you through some other use cases. The first use case is a pricing optimized initiative for one of our retail clients. Was the client was looking at large amount of data, and they were looking to be able to do pricing more effectively than they could before by analyzing this vast amount of data. So we suggested Hadoop as an infrastructure. We built the infrastructure for the client, and we migrated this large amount of data into centralized HDFS repository, which is HDFS is the file system for within the Hadoop ecosystem. And then we developed MapReduce code to process the data file and extract those to MySQL, so data could be presented through in the presentation layer on the pricing portal. I mean, I'm oversimplifying it here. Obviously, there were a lot of tasks involved in doing that, but it really allowed the client to effectively, one, keep all the data that they were getting. There were several, I believe, millions of attributes that they were looking at in deciding the pricing. That include store, weather, competitor pricing, you name it. And they wanted to keep all of these attributes and take those into consideration and be able to decide what is the right price to charge to their customers. And this Hadoop ecosystem and the infrastructure that we built and the presentation layer that we built on top of it really allowed them to ask that question, allowed them to do that pricing initiative and analyze all the data. So the pricing jobs that were earlier running on their legacy systems for, I believe, over 20 hours took less than 20 minutes to run now. And this allowed the client to really do dynamic pricing that they were unable to do before. Because if your job is taking 20 hours, there's no way that you can change your pricing quickly. And what if something errors out and then the job doesn't run? So you pretty much lose a day. So really by doing this initiative, we were able to move their legacy system to the legacy system processing to Hadoop, and allowed the client to analyze vast amount of data, understand all the attributes that they were not able to take in account earlier, and be able to dynamically price their products. All right. So with that, I'll ask Justin to talk about other use cases such as ETL modernization.
Great, thank you, Ankur. And what I'm going to do is take you through 5 additional use cases in addition to what Ankur just shared. These are all different examples of how we applied the technology for ourselves, for our customers, and delivered value. And I think before I jump into them, there's probably 3 main call-outs in terms of each of these use cases, in terms of the value that's delivered from them. I think you'll see in each of these there is the business value that's delivered, that is realized in terms of higher revenue, increased sales, or additional penetration into the market, or increased customer satisfaction. There's operational efficiency. So you'll see that Hadoop is really an enabler of making both IT and business operations more effective and efficient. And then finally, there are true cost savings to be attained through retiring or reducing more expensive technologies that Hadoop and the Hadoop ecosystem technologies have shown a capability to replace. So I'd encourage you, as we go through the rest of these use cases, obviously keep an eye out for each of those 3 elements to these use cases in terms of, and think in terms of your own organization where you might be facing similar challenges, or you may even think of other areas within your own organization that might be able to realize value from implementations of Hadoop technologies in this way. So I'm going to go on to a use case about DataStage ETL modernization. Just to set the backdrop, the client in this case was processing millions of records a day for their marketing business. This was about setting up all of their promotions and the calendar and the execution of those. And it was a very large and complex platform, and sort of in the middle of this landscape, there's a lot of data movement, obviously, with that many records, and there was a heavy reliance on traditional ETL tools. And this was really resulting in missed SLAs, and the volume was only increasing as they continued. So, you know, they began to look at the ROI. They laid out a business case, and they realized it was not really sustainable to keep making investments as the data volumes grew and the platform continued to suffer from a performance perspective. So the approach we used was to create a data hub model, and this is a concept that MetaScale has introduced. We talk about it frequently, about making Hadoop the center of your BI landscape. And it's something we've done for our customers and has proved extremely valuable and useful as a way to deploy Hadoop in the organization. It's not a replacement for every tool and any tool, but it, when introduced as part of the ecosystem, can really help organizations maximize the efficiency of their data landscape and reduce a lot of the challenges and pain points they have. So we created a data hub model where we source the data once and then reuse it many times. And then what we did is we reverse engineered all the ETL jobs on this marketing platform from DataStage into Pig, and we moved that source data into Hadoop. And we did our processing within Hadoop and leveraged the heavy lifting and the parallel processing capabilities that Hadoop provides. And then we dropped the data back in the DataStage when we were completed for that data to be consumed as usual. And what that allowed us to do is really not disrupt the overall platform. So we essentially replaced a processing step within the overall platform, and this reduced the risk of having to create new integrations, new interfaces by reintroducing the data back into its normal work stream. So what were the results? And I think these are really, really amazing if you think about it. So looking at 3 data sets of 1 billion records, Hadoop did these transformations in a fraction of the time that DataStage was taking to process those records. So we're looking at 1 hour versus 10 hours for processing. And not only did we see the benefits immediately in terms of the processing time, but then we were able to scale without any limitation, and we scaled up to 2 billion records with a very marginal increase in those processing time. And again, given the economical scalability of Hadoop, for a very modest increase in cost for additional hardware and data nodes. So for this specific use case, a huge return both from enabling the business to continue to grow the marketing platform, increasing operational effectiveness by meeting SLAs, and then finally just saving on the cost side by reducing our ETL licenses and reducing the footprint that our ETL was consuming. So that's the second use case we wanted to share. Moving on to the third is one around fraud detection. So this is a little bit different. And we had a customer with a loyalty program, and I think most of us are familiar with these loyalty programs. They're employed in a number of industries today to encourage deeper customer relationships and a higher value exchange of information and value between an organization and its customers. And so the client was running their monitoring on Teradata, and they were doing that on sort of a next day basis. And so there was a fair amount of data latency in the environment. And what the business realized was that there were missed opportunities in terms of identifying program issues and potential fraud in the system by having that day of latency. And as an example is, if you have someone gaming the system or perhaps taking advantage of an offer in a way that was not designed, catching it the next day or two may result in really literally millions of dollars to that customer. So the way we approached this was to really insert Hadoop as an intermediate data point into that process. And Hadoop was very well designed for that purpose, given the types of heterogeneous data formats and outputs that were being provided and produced. And so we were capturing data at the source, and we're able to land it easily and ingest it into Hadoop. We took these log files of activity on the loyalty program, collated them to a single file, and then populated within table structures in Hive. And then we used a tool called DataMirror and used dashboards there for operational reporting. but one of the things this allowed us to do, first of all, reduce that data latency. So we were able to identify issues, identify cases of potential fraudulent behavior, and immediately alert the business and the technology teams to that potential. And that allowed much faster response times, more responsiveness to opportunities as well as issues in the environment. And it really enabled the business to be more proactive and realize better value and actually deliver a better experience for their customers. And so that's our third example of an example where Hadoop was used for a specific use case and really was placed in. I think based on the 3 use cases we've shared so far, I think one common trend or theme you're probably seeing is that Hadoop does not need to be an end-all, be-all replacement for an entire application or functionality area. That it can really be used as a utility player in a broader landscape of systems and be brought in to handle a specific step or a specific need and then integrate with the remaining platform. So with that, why don't we go ahead and move on to the 4th use case, and this concerns mainframe batch processing. And again, here we had a challenge of scale and meeting SLAs, and we really needed to process more data than we can handle. In this particular business situation, our client was continually hitting thresholds in terms of mainframe capacity. They're having to purchase expensive capacity extensions in order to process the amount of data they had. And it was really beginning to impact the ability of the business to perform and be flexible in meeting the ups and downs of their business. And there's really time sensitivity around this data. It needed to move from one point to another. So again, there's a case of data latency here in the environment, as well as complex calculations. So here we again employed the data hub model, where we source the data once and reuse it many times. And in this case, we again were careful to only tackle one part of the job stream. So if you can imagine a mainframe job stream, it might have multiple steps to it. There may be some online components, some calculation components. We focused on those sections or parts of the job stream that had the most challenges in processing massive amounts of data. So we focused on the batch processing and where the maximum number of MIPS could be reduced, and really to reduce overall cycle time. And the results of that project and that approach allowed us to develop a scalable solution within 8 weeks. We were able to meet better and better SLAs, even though the amount of transactions were increasing. And we were also able to, again, getting back to the operational technology efficiency, was to reduce the amount of code in the environment, the number of lines of code, and that has sort of downstream benefits in terms of code maintenance, reliance on traditional skills in the mainframe, and moving those to more modern and up-to-date technologies. And then at the end of the day, we were able to help this client reduce their mainframe footprint and reduce licensing and hardware costs associated with that footprint. So I think, one other thing I'll call out here, I'll stop for a moment. That was our 4th use case. We have 2 more. Also wanted to call out the impact that using Hadoop technology has had on overall project timeframes for our clients. So our clients, when using these technologies, have realized actual reduction in their project timeframes. So the time from start to deliver a given functionality for the technology teams is reduced by using these technologies, just based on the scalability and the ease of integration. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next use case, which is around network analytics. And here was a situation where, as you guys are all well aware, there's been an explosion in terms of Wi-Fi and ability to get Wi-Fi in various formats, whether it be at the airport, in stores, in restaurants. And so we had a client who was generating a massive amount of data from network devices in their various outlets, and they were coming from a variety of different types of devices. So you had your standard network gear in these locations that were collecting and reporting out data on the traffic. and then you also had all the mobile devices being brought into these locations and being used. And so a normal traditional relational database would struggle to capture all these various multi-structured sources of data. A lot of it sort of would have the look and feel of log data, and so a typical database environment in terms of building the schema and the structure to support it would be a huge challenge. And again, this is where Hadoop shines. Its ability to manage various structures of data and semi-structured and unstructured data with ease, and being a place to land that and source it once. Hadoop really worked well and was a perfect fit. So our approach was to use Hadoop as the primary store of that data, and we sourced it to HDFS daily, and we conducted transformations of the data within Hadoop. And then we used MapReduce and Pig to extract that data, to put it in a format that we wanted to report off of, and the result was, first of all, we could process over 10 billion records, so the size and scale of all those devices reporting all that log data was not a challenge for Hadoop. It could handle it, especially with the different feed types and the conversions that needed to happen. We were able to bypass the need for ETL. So again, source to Hadoop, complete all transformations within Hadoop using our ELT to the XPower approach, and completed those in MapReduce within minutes. And then so this enabled the business in several ways. First of all, it allowed our network teams to monitor and predict failures, to better respond to Wi-Fi outages and other issues in the locations. It helped us to gain insight into the performance of the mobile apps that our associates were using, that our employees were using in those locations, and to understand application performance and provide feedback to the business and technology teams that were supporting those applications. And finally, of interest to the business is to gain insight into how customers were using those devices in the stores. And so gaining that sort of insight in terms of how our customers would engage with their devices, how they use that Wi-Fi connectivity, is very useful, and provides a lot of insight in terms of how do we deepen the relationship with those customers, and make offers and build that relationship. So that's the 5th use case, and we have one more, and this is around pricing system modernization. And this pertained to a client's pricing system where they managed the process of markdowns, and they were using more traditional technologies, so they're doing some of this processing on Mainframe and DB2, and again, it was a case of missed SLAs and limited flexibility and scalability. So our approach here was, on the front end, was to move off of some traditional tools into more open source technologies, using a Java JSP web-based app, and enhancing the user interface using jQuery. And then we moved the batch processing off the mainframe, similar to the use case we mentioned earlier, to Hadoop and Pig. And then for the sourcing, we used Scoop to bring the data from DB2, and then we use fast export to bring the data from Teradata, and so we're dealing with multiple sources here. Stage in Hadoop, prep the data, and then we did use MySQL as an intermediary layer. So I think another common theme here, and I'll talk about this a little bit in the next slide, is you can see a strong, MetaScale has a strong bias towards open source tools. So we really believe that there's been a revolution in terms of open source technology and the ability of enterprises to begin to leverage those technologies to reduce their reliance on proprietary solutions. And so that applies for us not only when it comes to Hadoop, but also integrating technologies, which I think you'll see in these use cases. So at the end of the day, Hadoop again enabled the faster batch processing and scalability. We were able to meet business SLAs. We reduced our loads on the mainframe and Teradata, and that resulted in significant cost savings. Again, with the experience it brings, leveraging Hadoop and the experience that MetaScale brings, we can ensure a smooth rollout with improved functionality, which results in obviously savings and business value for the business and the end customer. So those were 6 use cases that we wanted to share today. You'll see some common threads between them, but each of them focuses on a specific different business problem. And I'd encourage you to think in terms of your own business. Do any of these sound familiar? Have you experienced any of these types of issues? Or if not, has this discussion perhaps opened up other ideas of where your organization could potentially leverage these technologies to provide better value to the business? I did want to come back and just talk about the open source, the ability to migrate to open source and the potential there. And so MetaScale's experience has been that Hadoop and the Hadoop ecosystem of tools and related open source tools really provide a big potential to move away from traditional proprietary tools that are often expensive, inflexible, and really MetaScale provides not only a solution architecture perspective on these tools. We can help design and architect solutions around open source, but then we can also help you, we can provide the talent to help implement, but then we can also help you build your talent around these tools and have the sustainable skills in-house to manage, support, and continue to grow the functionality on these platforms. And you can see here, and these are obviously taken from the use cases we just discussed, where you can move from traditional licensed technology to open source and create an entire platform stack around open source. And that's a sort of deeply held sort of philosophy within MetaScale, and it's the way we approach the market. It's the way we approach each of our customers' challenges and business problems and how we seek to solve them. So with that, I think we're going to transition to questions. So Ankur and I are here and ready to respond to any questions that the audience has.
And actually, Justin, we've had several roll in, so let's just get started on them. Following up on the open source technology stack that you're just talking about, what are the challenges of convincing your legacy teams to migrate or adopt open source technologies?
I think you will definitely face. I think you'll be greeted with several different responses. There will be some that will be geared up and ready to go. Like they're interested, they're hungry to develop new skills and learn the new open source technologies. I think you will also meet some resistance by those who may feel threatened. And I think the one thing we want to, in our experience, one thing we want to underscore here is that there's no need to feel threatened. There's actually many paths from these legacy skill sets to the new technologies. We've actually helped customers and clients, and in-house, we have helped many folks cross-train and move across from traditional licensed technologies and legacy technologies to the Hadoop ecosystem. There are a lot of what we call foundation and bridge skills that form a basis that are either directly transferable or with some training provide a good foundational base for coming up to speed on these newer tools. So we think there will be change management issues that companies will need to address, but they are addressable, and they can actually, the answer is not to go out and hire a team from the market, because in fact in some of these areas you'll struggle to hire a team from the outside. Mm-hmm. So the answer really is about growing organically from within, and we've done that for ourselves and for our customers, and so we can help companies in making that transition.
All right. Now, as companies identify their own use cases, how do you go about prioritizing these?
So we often work with our customers to develop an evaluation framework. So you need to come up with a set of parameters or variables that you measure the use cases by, and so you want to go about it, because odds are, once you start introducing these capabilities, educate the organization about what the technology can do, you're going to get a lot of interest, a lot of different opportunities that come about. So you do have to basically work those through an evaluation framework in a common way to prioritize those. I think some of the key variables we'd say are certainly one of our key principles in adopting these technologies in-house is to start small and iterate. So don't try to take off too big of a chunk at first. Look for some low-hanging fruits, some use cases where success, the likelihood of success is very high, so that you can build off those successes and tackle additional use cases. So there is sort of a scoring method you can use, an evaluation framework to prioritize and help you make good decisions on what you start out with.
I would add, actually, as a part of our evaluation framework, it's important to define the success criteria up front, because use cases are both. You could actually say you could have a bottom line impact or top line impact, or could just have an overall efficiency. Things you were not able to do before, you could do now. So as Justin said, I think the key point is really start small, focus on low-hanging fruit. And we run into this with our clients all the time, and they come up with a number of problems that think will be solved right away. And we say, let's try one or two quick low-hanging fruits. Sometimes problem as simple as storage, right? Hadoop being a very cost-effective, huge fault-tolerant system could be a great tool just for storing your data. And I mean, everybody seems to be big on the whole analytics piece, but that's just one of the several things you could do on Hadoop. But I think the low-hanging immediate use cases could just be as simple as storing your data, be able to keep all the data that you were unable to do before, and be ready for the future, because all of our lives are becoming digital, and there's more data than there was ever before.
All right, I think that answered several questions, actually, but maybe we could take a step back, and what would you identify as some of the initial steps you would take in starting a big data project?
I think, so a couple of things. When we say, it's always a good idea to take a step back and see why are you doing something. Do your research. The technology is while the technology is very stable now over the years and well established, and at Sears we have seen it, it's now being used by some of the largest enterprises out there. So it's there, it's for real, and seems like it's there to stay now that we have not seen a compelling competitor in the last several years at all. So every other vendor seems to be coming up with their own version of Hadoop to be able to use Hadoop in their ecosystem. So whether it's Teradata Hadoop or IBM Hadoop or Intel's version of Hadoop, and now Microsoft and whatnot. So when we say starting out, it's important that we can find a trusted partner, and we say MetaScale has a huge advantage as a completely vendor neutral and platform agnostic company. We bring in that framework where you could, we provide evaluation that are completely neutral and completely vendor agnostic. And coming from a large enterprise, we understand the pain point for other enterprises. So I think it's very important to find that trusted partner who can actually help you understand the overall landscape of what's available to you before you jump on the bandwagon with our vendor or a particular technology. So understand what all is available to you, define your use cases up front, define success criteria, and then always start with a proof of concept. So a small POC that you could do, and we offer it at MetaScale. There are many other vendors who offer it. So it's very low-cost way of really having your own Hadoop infrastructure ready and trying some of the use cases.
I think another thing I'd add to that is make sure you start with the business opportunity or value that can be delivered, and then look to how the technology can help with that. Now that may sound obvious, but I think as we've been out in the marketplace, I think we've seen one of the many pitfalls is that Hadoop has gotten so much attention in the marketplace, and there's really so much hype around it, that folks are grabbing onto the technology without clearly thinking about how it aligns to their business strategy or how it's going to deliver business value. So, it's really sometimes in some organizations it's being implemented, but it's a technology going looking for a solution or a problem for it to fix without having clearly thought through the business strategy. And so I think it's about when you begin these programs is having stakeholders from the business. Maybe it's folks from the marketing team or the financial team who have a stake in this and who will bring those ideas, and make sure that they're committed to bringing business ideas to the table where this technology can be applied. Because I think it's the application of the technology that actually produces the value, as opposed to just having the technology for its own sake.
All right, a lot of great information. We do have some other questions, but unfortunately we're out of time. We'll try and reach out to each of you and answer your respective questions, but also feel free to contact us. You can contact us at contact@metascale.com or visit us on the website. We do have a 1-800 number as well. And just to remind you, this is first part of a series on Hadoop use cases. So our next webinar will be Tuesday, November 12th. If you haven't seen any registration for that, we'll be sending that out shortly as well. And one more item, we will be at Strata Conference this week. So if you're going to be at Strata, New York, stop by booth number 49. MetaScale will be there. And with that, I thank Justin and Encore, and I thank all of you for joining us.